Good evening, good morning, and how are you doing? I am so glad that you are tuning in to Pouring Good Tea. I'm your host, Van B, and I'm excited. I don't know if excited is the word that I should be using, but I really am for the informational purposes to be talking about preparing for death while living. And you're probably wondering, why are you excited about that? Because I need to be. You need to be too. Come on in, get your tea, whether it's cold, hot, spiked, or not, and enjoy the conversation. I'm excited to have with me two guests that are experts in their fields, to great people and terribly funny, great people. Before we get into it, let me just, as we do over here at Pouring Good Tea, tip out a cup, a sip. And to this week's sip goes to our care providers, our nurses, our doctors, our doulas, our CNAs, anybody that helps you to take care of your life, sustain life, to be okay. I want to say thank you from us to you. Thank you for what you do, especially during this time of COVID, during this time when people are mentally and physically ill. Big shout out and a heavy sip to you. Thank you. Now, let's get into it because that's what you're here for. Today, I have my guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves real quickly because, I could tell you the story, but it's better when a person shares with you exactly who they are. So, the lady first, and if you will introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes, ma'am. I am Angelique Gainyard. I am here in New York. I am a licensed funeral director for the past years. I want to give my age away, but it's been a number of years. And, I am in the business of helping families through, that final transition. When someone dies, that's what I'm here for.
I'm so glad you're here. And kind sir, thank you for speaking to our ladies. Please introduce yourself.
Well, good evening, ladies. My name is Wilson Patterson. I'm a licensed life, health, sickness, accident, disability, long-term care, Medicare agent,
Okay.
and I'm based out of Charlotte area. I've been in the commercial side or consumer side, I'll say. This is six and some change, most as an independent. I mentioned to um, Tracie probably a week or so ago, I guess, actually was inspired from my experience in the Air Force, which was really 40 years ago. I did insurance and benefits. And after spending a few decades in highly technical fields, very mind tickling, all that kind of stuff, paid good money, just didn't do nothing for my soul. So at 50, about 50, I, you know, decided the most fulfilling thing I had done for $400 a month was help people with insurance and benefits in the Air Force. So here I am today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I'm interested to know then, Angelique, how did you get into mortuary affairs?
True story, had a dead end job. My mom and my grandmother kept saying, you need to do something do something different. And I got a college catalog and I'm flipping through it, flipping through it, flipping through it. Nope, 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 nope. I think I can do that. Here I am 20 some odd years later. No family, no experience, didn't know anything about anything. I just saw that was something that I thought I could do. And decided to go for it. And here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think it's really awesome. I mean, when you think about morticians, you think about older, benevolent men who speak to you in hushed tones. And so to have,
Know plenty of those.
right, to have a pretty fly girl be like, hey, I'm a nurturer, but I can handle you in death too. That's kind of cute and that's sassy. So to get on something else, I don't want to every topic to be in relation to the pandemic, but I'm curious, and give me your short answers on how your work has been affected by the pandemic. And I would like to hear from you first, Wilson.
Well, from just a personal standpoint, for lots of the industry, they had to react to, the social distancing and all that. For me, since I'd already pursued working from home like a year before, it was just an adjustment for me. Really, I guess, expediting like the distribution of my websites and all that, and trying to step up my marketing game. But as far as trying to serve senior people, which are primarily not very tech savvy, at least the Medicare people, it's been a disaster for me because they need to see people face to face.
Right.
Yeah. So we're just coming out of that where, maybe that will change.
Okay. And you?
Oh, wow. The really, really short answer is we were not prepared.
I bet.
We were not prepared for this. It was a real adjustment to going from having large services for people, and then all of a sudden, people are panicking because they can't have services. They can't go see the person when they're in a hospital sick, so they can't do that. They can't do services. And I mean, we were swamped. I was to the point where I wouldn't even answer my phone because I knew there was nothing I could do for you. And the calls that I did take, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I can't, there's absolutely nothing we can do for you. So it was it was heartbreaking. I think that you wanted to help people, but you couldn't. And for everybody who experienced the death, I mean, there are families that had 1 death, 2 deaths, 3 deaths. I mean, they're doing it over and over and over again. Nobody was prepared for it.
Wow.
It was technically, yeah, now we're going from services to Zoom, or Google Meet, or, no services at all. So no one was prepared for this at all.
That would have to be the statement of the year for pretty much everybody, particularly given what's going on. Yes. So when you hear, and either one of you can answer this question, when you hear the phrase prepare for death while living, what do you think of?
I think at this point, what I hear is you need to speak to somebody like Wilson. You need to listen. Death is guaranteed. There's absolutely no escaping it. Everybody has an appointment at some time or another. You don't know when, but you will face it. But before it gets to that point, listen, get insurance. Right. Get insurance. Get it while you're young and it's cheap. Lock those rates in. If you can spend $20 on, a pack of cigarettes, or, those brand new fresh Jordans or whatever that came out, that's a premium, at least. Get some insurance. That's what I say.
Wilson, I'm sorry. What are some obvious things that we forget when we're preparing for death?
Well, since you're saying like, wow, okay. Since you're saying like while you're living, which unfortunately lots of people don't prepare while they're living. They much would rather keep procrastinating, right?
Right.
So if you really, I think for me, and I know personally, you really have to reckon with death for yourself personally. I think every person needs to have a realistic understanding of how they perceive death, how they're going to deal with their own death, right? And convey it to someone. Personally, I think it should be in writing. And in preparing to make it better for your survivors, you will have the stuff in writing, not just a life insurance policy, but perhaps a healthcare power of attorney, particularly in COVID, where this may have been the last time you saw this person and you'll never see them again. And someone is asking them who's their next of kin to see what the emergency procedure is going to be, Right. Because a healthcare power of attorney is for that moment, those moments when you're incapacitated, but it's made when you're in sound mind, preparing. And all those things will give you more sense of balance or peace or whatever you want to call it when you prepare, life insurance, powers of attorneys, estate planning, just tidy up and let somebody know. Don't just have the papers and then somebody have to come find it, because I've been through that too.
Hey, don't jump ahead in my interview. I got those questions down the line.
But I just been through it in the past year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it happens. And so since you asked that question, you kind of made that statement. One of the questions that I did have is, where do you keep those? Where do you normally keep your your request, your final request? Or where do people normally keep it? Is it a good place to keep it, or is there a better place? So let's say, God forbid, I die today or tomorrow. What do people know? Where do people normally go if they're going to come to my home to check to see what my final requests are and my availability to have that done?
Are you asking Wilson?
Yes,
Oh,
either one
okay.
of you can chime in.
Well, it depends on your situation. And since this is primarily women, I don't know if it's primarily single women. Everybody's going to have, you know, different answers for that one. But for a single woman,
Mm-hmm.
that is very important to have someone that is going to be there with you thick and thin. And you can tell them
Mm-hmm.
it's in the firebox under the bed, all the stuff you need to, or put it on a flash drive, it's in this flash drive, everything, my social security number, my age, date of birth, my driver's license, all that stuff, policy numbers. And that is, don't want to jump off, but that is something I intend to do with personalized consultations, but
Mm-hmm.
just saying. But those are things very helpful. And to really know your network, because I have a couple of friends that I know, men and women, that I know are single and
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of loners. And I just check on them. Just check, you all right? Because they're a little bit too proud to tell you something happened. And then every now and then they will. I'm like, hey, suppose we didn't talk. Then what? And it's some people just don't want to say they're having challenges with being alone, not with necessarily organization, but I know some people that have fallen, for instance, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
they're over 40, and it's like, no, you need a network that you can call on for anything.
Okay. So how do I prepare? Um, should I be preparing, because I'm over the 40 or what have you, and typically 40, 50-year olds are single women, or when I say single, single and or married, they don't have children at home. But now we're having, and I'm one of them, I raised my hand, I've got a minor child. So does my planning and my thought process need to look different than someone who has adult children or that has a husband? Um, how does it look, need to look different, and if so, how?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a unique concern because it with children, minor children, for one, whole different array of benefits become necessary.
Okay.
Survivor benefits become necessary as far as like your understanding of Social Security, knowing that, they'll have that, but also what else will they need as far as college planning? Do you want to leave a monetary legacy? I mean, actual wealth, or do you want to just leave them something to get by, or whatever you can do? Those are considerations. But certainly the planning for stability, and I know a lot of forward-thinking Black women and people want their children to do better than they did. So they certainly, if they can provide something toward education, it may not be a big $50,000 cash settlement, cash amount you saved. It could be a life insurance policy
Mm-hmm.
that provides for that. It would actually be the most efficient way, to be
Yes.
honest.
Yes.
But all of those provisions will be something that should be thought about, but only you can have your values, because every single person I've spoken with, they haven't put a lot of thought about haven't put a lot of thought to it. It's like, so you can't tell somebody else their own values, but you know, I know a child is very important to the older people. I mean, to a single woman, but I do know, you would want to plan according to your values, and what kind of legacy do you want to leave?
Got it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So those are things to keep in mind. Um, I'm looking at some of the questions that I have, and I'm trying to keep some of because we have a team of people, and they were, they would say, make sure you ask this and make sure you ask that. So every time I look at these few couple of questions, I try to keep a straight face, but we're having a conversation. So it is what it is. I will ask this, and I'm going to ask you, Angelique, what if what I want goes against my family's tradition? Um, what happens at the funeral? And I'm sure you probably have some stories where kids and spouses or whatever get there, and one person says she wants to be cremated, and the other person says we need to have the church, the band, $9,000 worth of flowers. How do you manage that? How do you mitigate that when you have people sitting in that space?
Well, I'm gonna tell you how I do. Honestly, the one I'm like, who's paying the bill?
Right.
Whoever's paying the bill is the one who calls the shots. Now,
Okay.
I have had situations. I have had a situation, one in particular I can remember, where this man he had been with this woman for 30, 40 years. They lived together, but he was still married. His wife lived somewhere down south.
Okay.
So he left all of his money, his insurance, everything he left to his girlfriend. So the wife comes from down south, and she's got on the widow's hat and everything, and she's all, well, this is my husband, and I said, okay, I understand that. I said, but here's the thing. Unless you're paying the bill, okay, I understand you say you want to do this, you want to do this, you want to do that, and you're his wife. I'm going to have to respect that. But unless you're footing the bill, my hands are tied. My suggestion is you and his girlfriend, y'all sit down. And that's what I'll, tell people. Sit down, come to some kind of an agreement about what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. Can y'all meet in the middle and try to do something fair for everybody? And they worked it out. They worked it out. And, on the rare occasions where it seemed like they was ready to go to fisticuffs, I just sat back and let them sit back. Sit back and give them the face. And they'll eventually they'll be like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this right now. This ain't what she wanted. Yeah.
So if you're listening or watching, just know whether you're on the side, obviously, if you're dead, you don't know. But if you're somebody's little friend or special friend, make sure you guys work that out. Go and talk to my friend Wilson.
What they can do, I don't know if all states do it, but I know a lot of states will have, they have a document that's called, I can't recall the exact name, but it leaves a document that leaves who is in control of your final disposition. So even if it's somebody for 100 years and they live in a different state, but they come up with the state, if you have that document, and like you said, leave it in a file, leave it with this person, you have a team of people who know, you know what? His girlfriend Edna is in charge. Here's his signature. This is his document. She's the one that's calling the shots. And as long as he signed it, it's notarized, she knows what her role is. There's really nothing the wife can do. There's nothing the wife can do.
Fortunately and unfortunately.
Here's my end.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll say from all that I've seen in insurance, it certainly that's a legal premise that, the wife would definitely have some say. If it's still a legal wife and is never divorced, somebody would be up for a fight, because the wife and the successors, they use the Latin term posteripes. They don't even have to name the people after that successor, that beneficiary. But if that wife or spouse is still alive and they're not divorced, they have legal grounds to get what they need. Might not be able to arrange a funeral service, but as far as any contract, if she was designated as the beneficiary, and technically The husband, I guess, could have written the boyfriend in there, but some states would not go for it. They would not go for it because they say it would become a question of interest, because you have to have an interest in a person's life to even be able to be a beneficiary, right? Or to write a policy on them. Let's say that. Like you can't just write a policy, say, I want to get a policy on Joe Blow, because you don't have a relationship with Joe Blow.
Right.
Okay. And then the law says by precedent, spouse, children, brothers, sisters, all that kind of stuff. But if it's specified anywhere about a spouse, and at least as far as insurance, almost all insurances are going to give the spouse priority, and certainly a durable power of attorney or, will or an executor of an estate might get into some legal stuff. But it's going to be hard to overcome the precedent of a spouse, especially even if they were just on paper for 30 years. And the other one was on, the side lady was around for 40. It might be a legal argument somewhere. Kind of doubt it though.
See that now that brings up the question for me then. What about me and I'm in a same-sex relationship and we weren't married, or we had this space. So if I come to you, Angelique, and I say, my partner has died, as long as I have the money, you're fine with that. Is that the way?
I mean, I can't speak for all states. I don't know
Right.
about any other state, but I know right here in New York, it's a little bit more flexible now than it used to be. And if you and your partner is deceased, and you have the money, or you have a life insurance policy, you can leave. If your partner wrote out a life insurance policy and they said, well, I'm going to leave my best friend Tracie as beneficiary. Okay, that's your money.
Right.
You can do what you want with it. You can bury her if you want. Now, if she comes up with a daughter, and her and the daughter were estranged for 20 or something years, that's a little hinky. Because then again, at that point, I'm going to say, can y'all work it out? Because things will be held up. If you decide to take it to court, the court may side with you. If your partner and her daughter have been estranged for 20 years, then the court is going to be, well, why are you coming up now? You haven't seen her in 20 years, and there's fiduciary interest. Why are you coming up now? What do you hope to gain? So they make an issue of it, which is why I always suggest, hey, work it out, see what y'all can come up with. And if it's to the point where it's really, really, really contentious, then I'll just say, I'm so sorry, I cannot help you. I will, yeah. I cannot help.
And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Go ahead, Wilson.
No, I was saying that's prudent.
I think that's extremely fair, because at the end of the day, you're the professional deciding what you do professionally, and you're not mitigating people's relationships or being their counselor on that level. So I think that is extremely fair. I am learning a wealth of information when I was interested in this, not only for myself, but some of my girlfriends and I, we sit around and we talk about this, and we talk about it obviously from our own experience, but there's so much more to think about. And you, in just a short amount of time, you've mentioned so many reasons why we need to prepare for this before it's needed.
And so, thing also people need to realize too is that, especially when you're doing your life insurance policy, traditionally it is used to take care of final services and whatever bills you have. But if you leave your best church sister Mary is your beneficiary, that's Mary's money. Mary can take that money and do what she wants with it.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have to use it. She doesn't have to use it for funeral. She can use it. And I've had it where, these women, they were church sisters for 40 years. And, she said, oh, I know Bertha's going to take care of me. My family ain't worth nothing. They ain't this, they ain't that. Did Mary take that money and said, I'm not putting out one dime on that funeral? And who could force it?
Wow.
You can't force it. You're in a pine box, and Sister Mary is off on the.
She went on a cruise.
On a cruise, yep. She went on a
cruise. She
rolling.
Yeah, and it was so sad, to think that this woman trusted you, y'all been, Sunday with the ushers uniform and Women's Day and this day, and y'all are cut buddies. And she turns around and says, no, my money, I'm doing what I want to do. And there was nothing anybody could, we couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't our call. It wasn't the family's call either. And I'm like, well, can they sit down and work it out? Maybe the pastor can step in and say, hey, you know what, Sister Mary, can we? She wasn't trying to hear it. So I said, oh, well.
Let me just say to my friends and my besties, you know who you are and you're listening. If I leave something to you and you don't do right by me, I will become a professional Hank 24/7. So I'm going to ask you this in an answer for your respective fields. When we're planning, what are some things that we, as the consumers for your service, we're focused too much on or too little on? So for Angelique, am I in there buying?
Yes, I'm thinking, okay, there are two things in particular that I think people focus a little bit too much on. They focus a little bit too much on what other people are going to think about the type of services they provide for the loved ones. I tell them ultimately, this has to be paid for with your pocketbook, not with your heart. So you may want to do a champagne service, but you really only have sell some money. Don't go broke trying to impress people. Don't do that.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the person who's deceased, they're past all worries. You still have a mortgage, you still have a car note, you still have utility bills, you still have things you have to do. So you can't worry about what everybody else around you is paying. And sometimes I see them, they're trying to scratching their heads, they're trying to figure out, oh, how we're going to do this? I'm gonna take a loan against my pension. And I'm cheap as black dirt. I don't believe in spending spending gobs of money for something, to impress people. Don't do that.
Right.
Do that. You only have a certain amount of money. Let's try to find something we can do with that. So that's one thing. And another thing that kind of, gets my goat a little bit is the fine details. Like, oh, well, we got to make sure cousin Shirley is here, but she can't come until next week. So we're going to have to reschedule that until the following week after. And we got to get these balloons, and we got to get this t-shirt, and we got to get this face mask, and we got to get them printed, and we got to do the enemy, like little nitpicky details, that's, I understand this is a celebration you're trying to plan, but don't get bogged in the minutia. Let's take care of, what's important. Anything else will fall into line. We can take care of the small stuff as we go along. But don't, it's not a life or death situation if you don't get those buttons with grandma's face on it.
Correct.
Right.
That's what I think people spend a little bit too much time and, thought on.
And what would you say to that, Wilson?
No, I would certainly say well said on that,
Yeah.
And one thing you and I have discussed or it's come up a lot is being authentic. Just be authentic. I think my family, for instance, knows probably won't even have a funeral for me. It would not be traditional by any stretch of the imagination. And nobody should even be concerned about wasting their time coming by if you don't do it in my lifetime. It's just the way it is. I'm that kind of guy. Don't even waste your time. But a lot of people are too comfortable or uncomfortable about other people's concerns. And one of the things I was going to say, focus on your desires, right? Find your balance and your wiggle room, and I don't even like try to make everything sound so rigid, because it's really not. There are so many options to do so many things, or old school vernacular, 1,000 ways to skin a cat. You know what I'm saying? And it really is, if you think about your options, because that's the way you manicure your own lifestyle's values, and it can turn out monetarily and everything. Because, well, just to say, in short, if you focus, you'll find a lot more options than most people will ever advise you, an advisor or whatever, but based on your values. And I think that is probably the main thing. Really get down to your own values and what's important to you, and it might really surprise yourself, some of the details that nobody's ever thought of.
Mhm.
You want to hear something
Good
about mine?
answers.
For
Good
for mine?
answers.
For mine? See, they know. My
Not,
son knows.
not
Come,
yet.
come, come on, come on, come on. No, okay, my bad.
not,
Go ahead. Go
not
ahead.
yet.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm curious. What in today's market, and we know you're talking about from where you are, Angelique, what is the average cost of a full-on funeral versus cremation?
So a full-on funeral, you're averaging these days in this area, you're looking at anywhere between, say, 8 and maybe 12,000, depending really on the cemetery. Cemeteries, I mean, I've cemetery plots for as little as, $500-$600, and then they can go up to $20,000. So it depends on, do you want to be in the ground? Do you want to be in a mausoleum? That determines an awful lot of what your final price is going to be. And cremation also can be anywhere from, say $6,000 and up. That depends on, do you want to do a fancy funeral? Do you want to do a fancy casket? Again, I am just as cheap as the day is long. I'm like, look here, you're not about to spend $5,000 on a casket that you're going to burn. Let's not do that. Let's look at another option. Let's look at something in the, $2,000 range. Let's bring that down a little bit. Let's bring that back down a little bit, because that don't make no sense. Well, they say, oh, well, I have to go to this cemetery, and like, look here, this cemetery plot right here is $12,000. This is real estate that you yourself will not enjoy. You cannot put a barbecue pit on there. You can't sit on the back porch there. Why do you want to spend $12,000 on a grave here? I mean, I understand it's a beautiful cemetery. I'm all for beautiful cemetery, but $12,000 there as opposed to maybe $4,000 or $5,000 there. That's $7,000-$8,000 that you just saved. So, it really, depends on where you're going to be buried and what you're going to be in. And then things like, people get fancy with 4,000 or 5,000, all of these flowers, and then they want dove release, and then they want a horse and carriage, and, things like that. That's cute, but not really necessary. Yeah.
I'm trying to keep my faith neutral about all that, but yeah, some of that's not cute. It's showy, and to each his own. Whatever they like. I'm love to hear you weigh in on that, Wilson.
Well, I was just going to say from personal experience, too many times recently, I can confirm in North Carolina, or at least in the Charlotte area, you can get a cremation with urn and about 4 or 5 certified copies of your death certificate for under $1,000, right at $1,000. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. That's good to know, and it's an option. It's always an option.
Yeah.
Speaking of cremation, one of the questions that someone on the team wanted me to ask you, um, does it hurt when you get cremated?
I don't know. I've never had anybody come back and say anything. So I'm going to assume, if they do out, that stings a little bit.
Wow.
Well, so I've done part of my job by asking that question, so we at least got it down in the conversation. So they'll listen, and I kind of said that in the question, the Q&A, but there you go. Do you have any buyer beware tips for a person? Because when we go into, and not everybody is a good person. Some people is, they're in business and it's about the bottom line, and the bigger the bottom line, the better their pockets are, obviously. But it is a time when we, the consumers, are emotional. So what are some buyer beware things that we need to ask?
Ask for a general price list. Okay,
Okay.
every that you go to, it's mandated by the FTC that any funeral home you go to must have a printed general price list, which basically is, for lack of a better word, it's a menu, and it gives you, a list of costs for each individual line of service or each individual line of merchandise that you may want. Okay. We don't do what is called a package. I know people say, well, what's the package? I say, no, we can't give you a package. We can give you the average cost of the service. Everything will be itemized on your contract, your statement of goods and services. It'll list for every little thing will have a price. So be mindful of that. Buyer beware. I know people will buy, they'll get merchandise from outside. I'm okay with that. I don't mind if you go to whomever your florist is, whoever may do print work. Maybe you have somebody in church that they use their printer. I'm all for that. Maybe you have somebody who only does, they do the hair and makeup. Well, Tussie from the beauty shop always did mommy's hair and makeup. She wants to come in. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. No, I'm serious. That has happened. I don't have a problem with that. As far as like caskets and urns are concerned, I don't have a problem with that. I will say though, and I know this sounds like sour grapes, but I'm just going to have to say it, as far as caskets are concerned, when they are bought from, places online or online, and, some of these big box chain stores, they sometimes will sell caskets. There's a reason why it was so inexpensive. And that's all I'm going to say. It's just that there's a reason for that. Lucky thing, after so many years, I know what I'm looking at. I'm like, oh, doggone, this is not happening. This is not happening. This is not happening. But let's try to fix this as best we can. And it worked out in the end. But it's like, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. But
because I've seen some big chains, and I won't mention the name, for advertisement, but I've seen one of the big chains that sells caskets, and I'm just thinking, I got a visual because I'm a visual person, and I don't mean it in poor taste, but I'm just thinking, you think you bought a Cadillac and you got a Yugo. I'm dating myself by saying that, a Yugo. So
without an engine,
is that where right, without an engine, is that where we're just going to duct tape this together to make sure that it stays intact long enough to put it in the ground?
Crazy glue, duct tape, crazy glue, rubber bands, staples, hot glue. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you do what you have to. I understand that sometimes families they have to. So.
So on to you, Wilson. I know that you are licensed in North Carolina and a bunch of other states, but we're going to have some people on here that are going to go to providers in their local state or their local city. What are some things that they need to ask about? Because you do need to build a relationship with the person that's going to help you before you pass away to get wealth and burial and all the different services that you provide. What are some things that a woman should be asking? Not necessarily specifically about the insurance, but the what are some red flags?
Well, that's a very generic way of putting it. But I don't know. I think people should just be realistic about their situation, because hardly anybody's going to have an identical situation. If everything looked right, identical on paper as far as numbers and all that stuff, it still won't be identical as far as you as an individual. And even to the point of your own personal health identity. Quite frankly, when we're talking about planning for death, it's usually about morbidity, sickness, illness, not being in peak health. So, I think we should prioritize good health, good quality, I'm not saying super pristine lifestyle and all that, but recognize the part that health plays in it and how it's going to really shape the rest of your living life. I mean, your health. I mean, almost everything is going to start to play around your health at some point. At some point,
Okay.
for most people, very few people will get out of having something. I won't say disabling, but you won't be quite as fit as you were when you were 19, when you're 80. You can just about count on that. And
Mm-hmm.
and long before that, you'll start paying for it in extra healthcare expenses. And I think those are some of the things that probably be very helpful people to start thinking about, especially the single women. And because don't want to get into deep statistics, but the big money start coming in to play when long-term care implications come up, when you need somebody to care for you, or you start needing assistance, custodial care in some way,
Mm-hmm.
and you just can't do those activities of daily living. It might be temporary even. A stroke, lots of people have strokes in their 40s and 50s, change their life. And even though it may be for, 120 days that they're severely um, affected, it will likely change the rest of their life, you know. So that would be an indicator, but hopefully you'll start preparing before then. And I'm not trying to plug my business, but that's the kind of stuff I try to prepare for in the insurance policies I write, both life and health. I try to make all those needs, in case those things happen. And in case you don't have an extensive network of relatives and daughters and all that stuff. So, you know, prepare for life through health.
Okay. Okay. Great information. And as we stereotypically know, women tend to not trust salespeople, cars, mechanics, blah, blah, blah. So, my question to you, aside from that information, and I'll just say it, when it's my life. So, when I'm going to ask for your help as a professional, I want to feel like I'm listened to, that I'm not being rushed, that you're not being evasive. What are some other tips that you would give to a woman in whatever stage of life that decides I need to get some health insurance? What are some things that she should look for when she's building that connection to feel comfortable enough to say, okay, I trust you to guide me in this, and that, and the other? Or what are some
One,
red flags that should say, hey, let me run the other way?
there you go. Well, I'd say just being objective, you have most people have access to the internet, read reviews, every insurance professional has a national producer number. Hopefully they'll list it. You can look up through your state department if there are any complaints against that agent. If they're a registered agent that does like investment advising or whatever, those are FINRA registered agents, and you can literally look up their number and find out the complaints. You can do it through your Department of Insurance and through those regulatory authorities. I would say do that. That's basic stuff if you want to, and then seek referrals. From
Mm-hmm.
from people. Ask, hey, what do you think about this person? Someone that's had experience. And then, like for me, I tend to be more, I kind of go on vibes. Obviously I go by visual cues and all that stuff, but
Right.
you get a feeling for the people, some people that you can work with. That's all I'll say. If you know them or you trust, just like you were advised to contact me, you trust the person to a degree, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
count your network, you know, the
Yeah. And
resource.
and and that's good, and that's great information. I consider myself a knowledgeable person in a lot of areas, but I personally did not know that there was a national producing number for agents that I could look. And I know to go to reviews. I know to go to Yelp. So that's actually really good
Yeah.
information. I'm going to get to the emotional or whatever side it is of why are people uncomfortable making these plans, and it's a two-part question because you watch TV about the have and the have nots and the wealthy people, stereotypically, and even after I did my research, people that have a different mindset about wealth and about generational wealth and about care, what have you, they tend to have these conversations almost as if it's part of the dinner, like Pastor Rose, this is what I'm going to do. And it could be, hey, I've got a 3-year-old and I may only be in my late 20s. Let me go ahead and address this in case, they're not thinking in case something happened. Like Angelique said, they go in knowing that it's an appointment and it's going to happen. Let me prepare now. So, what do you think are the mindsets, and why are we as a people? Why do we tend to be so emotional about it? I'll take your short answer first, Wilson, if
I
there
don't
is a short
I
answer.
don't think it's about our people. It's just people. No one wants to. Not many people have reckoned with the finality of mortality. Like, but it's certain, guaranteed. But it's
Mhm.
so common for people to procrastinate. Obvious, it seems like the younger generation, 2030, they don't think about nothing. It's like, wow, for a while. And I don't know why, but I can tell you from personal experience, my son passed away when I was 26. And
Mm.
it let me know no guarantees on time changed my life. I was not prepared. I was insured. My wife was insured, but was too dependent on employer insurance at the time and
Mm-hmm.
had no coverage for my own son and was too broke just getting out of the Air Force to even bury my own son. How sad. What a hard lesson, but I learned it. So
Wow.
it's no certain time, just people need to be realistic, There's no certain time for anybody. So it's just like, I don't think there's an answer. It's the same way with Black people, Indians, and everything that I've met. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to deal with it. They want to deal with life, not death.
Okay. And you, Angelique?
Yeah, I agree with him 100%. People are not prepared because they don't want to be. It's something that you don't want to think about. You um, plan for baby showers.
Right.
You plan for weddings. You plan for graduations. But here's the thing: you may not ever have a child. You may not ever get married. You may not go to that graduation ceremony, be it yours or somebody else's, but you will die.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody around you may die, but it's an unpleasant thought. It's,
It
something
is.
that nobody wants to think about. And I mean, and I've had friends, that's, I guess it's just a mortician in me. One of the things I asked, are your affairs in order? Do you at least have a life insurance? I ain't got no insurance policy. Why don't you have an insurance policy? Well, I'm gonna be dead. I ain't gonna worry about it. Don't worry. But that's kind of unfair, though. I mean, I understand you won't be there. That's true. But do you want to leave that burden to somebody else? Because it's already enough that your passing, it created a hardship in their mind and their hearts. Their psyche just took a bruising, but then turn around and say you don't have any. And Wilson, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, you had insurance, your wife had insurance, you had job insurance. Some people, they don't even have that. They won't even get that. Or they say, oh, I'm covered through my job. Okay, that's great. But then what happens if you're not employed with your job anymore?
Right.
you know
Right.
do you still keep that insurance? Is it something that's going to be permanent for the rest of your life? Or your spouse may have job insurance that covers you, but what happens if all of a sudden that insurance is cut? I mean, get prepared. um a minister, he's deceased now, but I loved him to pieces. He was the nicest guy, and he said, people don't come together unless they're hatched, matched, or dispatched. and you know,
Mm-hmm.
they
That's true.
celebrate weddings, they celebrate baby showers. They do not celebrate, a funeral. That's just something that, is an eventuality. And even if you say, well, we're not going to have a funeral, we're just going to do, a direct cremation or direct burial. Okay, that's fine, but just don't leave the burden to the people you leave behind.
There we
And it's just something that people just
I think
they
it's
don't.
selfish. I think it's really selfish.
It's selfish, yeah, but it's selfish, but it's just one of those things that humans just don't want to face.
And it's unfortunate that GoFundMe has become our new insurance provider.
I
Yes.
hate that.
Yes, yeah, it's unfortunate. On a
Mhm.
personal note, and I mean, listening to what you said, Wilson, was very sobering. And even when you were speaking, Angelique, when you were talking about different things, I could picture different people in my mind's eye
Mhm.
that they felt that situation, and not in a judgmental way. It's just matter of fact. For me, I don't know where I got the notion to do it, but for me, it wasn't an emotional thing. I had two daughters, and I was a divorced mom, and I didn't trust the guy. I didn't feel comfortable with him that
Mhm.
sold me the insurance, but I knew I had shopped, and I
Mhm.
knew this was the best rate for what I needed.
Right.
And they were still like young or what have you. But then
Mhm.
I had a third child,
Mhm.
and I think when I had her, my youngest was maybe 13. And I didn't think in terms of fear. I just remember looking at them and thinking, like we all think or should think, you want better for your kids than you've had for yourself on
Right.
every level. So what
Mhm.
I did was go out and I increased it because now I have three people.
Mhm.
And when I thought that they were mentally able to process process it, we actually sat down and we talked about it.
Mhm.
And I didn't hide from them like, hey, the oldest, you're not going to get the most.
Right.
It's going to be split up, and you're going to actually get the least because at this time she was in college,
Mhm.
and you know the military, me being a veteran and her dad being a veteran, it paid for a lot of things. So
Right.
the youngest would get the most because she still had to, I mean, at this point, even now she's still in middle school. So
Mhm.
she knew, they knew that she would get the most and, graduated amounts. So when it came time, it wouldn't be a jealousy, a problem, an issue. I said it, this is what it is. I even went as far as to say, listen, when I die, I don't want any sad spirituals. I want to have this, I want to have that. And I'm very clear about it. Sometimes I update it because a new song comes out and I was like, I don't want to take me to the kingdom. I want, this, that kind of thing.
Right,
And
right.
we actually not laugh, but my kids say, what about that one jacket that makes you look like a mafia wife? So I made it more palatable to them to have the
There you go.
conversation.
There you go.
Mhm.
And I
That's
think
what's up.
we don't do that enough with our children upwards generationally or even downwards or sideways, which leads
Mhm.
me to one of my final questions. How do we work around, because we may not ever get our aunties, because as we get older we're caring for older family members, whether they're biologically our family members or not. And I've got a slew of people that feel comfortable, because they trust me, they know that I have integrity and I've got an attention to detail and whatever else is important to them.
Right.
How do I have that conversation? Or is it even a conversation? Just do it. How do you get your older relatives to to say, hey, let's talk about this? I'm not saying you look like you're on death's door. I'm simply saying I want to do what you want. Any ideas and suggestions?
Uh, get them liquored up and go through their stuff. No.
Let me write
It
that
might
down.
take that for some. It might.
Yeah.
It just might.
You know what? No, there's like no one size fit all answer
Right.
to any of
Right.
that. I mean, I know with my grandmother, God bless the dead, she had to a lot of older Americans now who are, on Medicare and they're receiving, SSI or something like that. Sometimes they have to get their affairs in order to stay eligible,
Mhm.
for Medicare and Medicaid and stuff like that. So if they have to get their affairs in order, then they'll reach out and say, you know what, I can't stand my daughter, but let me give her a call and let's make some plan to do something, and they'll do that. But then for other people, like you said, you got some non, biological aunties and uncles who just need the help. I would say try the gentle approach, because sometimes, it may take a little bit of trying, time after time after time, but eventually they'll get there, because the alternative is, unfortunately, and it happens, the alternatives, you don't know what they want.
Right.
And you have no idea of what they have, if they have anything prepared. And it's just the same that sometimes it comes down to that. So what, tell them, hey, listen, let's review your stuff. Let's you've got old policies that may have beneficiaries who died, or you got old policies where you left certain amounts to this one, a certain amount to that one, but they may not need that anymore.
Mhm.
They may need something else. So check those out.
Right.
And definitely go speak to Wilson. Find out, what you need. Find out what you need, because he may be able to look at your stuff and say, well, you have an ADD here that you really don't need here anymore. You're 95 years old. I can't see you getting on a motorcycle. So why do you have motorcycles?
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, and I've
Right.
had, it's funny, I've had one time, and I felt so bad. This woman, she came in to take care of her mother. Her mother was 85. She was about 60 something herself.
Right.
And she gave me an old policy. I'm not going to name the company, but it was an old policy, and it was against loss of limb. It wasn't a life insurance policy. It was an accident policy.
Right.
And, she kept paying it faithfully. And I'm saying, oh, no, oh, lady. And there was nothing we could do with it.
All right.
So she had to clean out her own savings, to try to do
Wow.
something for mom. And it's, sit down, review that stuff, and see what you have going on.
Well said. Can I
Of course.
interject something? That is one of the benefits of actually having a relationship with a some insurance person you trust, and you understand your own goals and those annual reviews. I know a lot of people don't understand the necessity of, maybe not every year, but every couple of years, with the different stages in life and our different levels. Well, since most of us have some kind of debt and we reach different kind of milestones, and quite frankly, there's so many different ages with Social Security and Medicare and all that stuff, and depending on where you work, you know those are very relevant to how you should be making adjustments. I mean, the average person out here working for a company these days can pretty much count on working full retirement age, 72
Mhm.
almost. But if you're a federal fire officer, you can retire at 50. Totally different thing. And it's a lot of different situations. But, having those reviews and constantly being aware of the changes in your life are very helpful in keeping in focus what's important. And it's all part of the plan. And certainly if you have someone that you want to benefit from your life's work, you want them to be a part of, or at least informed of, your value system and what's changed and how it might want to affect them. And sometimes it may be someone that can accompany you to go with the the annual reviews, if they're going to be an important person in the big picture anyway, like a survivor or whatever. but certainly, children and all that should know um, about any changes. And the expense for most 40-year-olds right now should be very reasonable, I think, for most to handle most things you'll be concerned with. I think it's within reach dollar wise for most 40-year-olds in reasonable health, except for in New York.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
I low key resemble that mark as well, being from New York.
I'm just saying. No, it's hard in New York for insurance. It really is. A lot of insurance companies don't even do business in New York. It's true.
Yeah.
I never thought I would put this word refreshing with the word death, but this conversation has been refreshing. It takes the sting out of having the conversation. It's been insightful and entertaining, to say the least, and great information. Thank you so much for first doing the work that you both do. It's not the fun stuff. You're not meeting with people that want to party plan, albeit a final party. It's not the, ooh, girl, I'm so excited to see you, person. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for being the subject matter experts in your respective fields. And thank you for gracing our listeners with some really good information.